Thank you and welcome to the Energy Technology Series. We're featuring PowerSecure today. We're super excited that Bradley has come back to sponsor us this year. I'm Jess Buchanan. I'm the Innovation Program Manager, so I'll be taking care of most of this series. We also have John Morrison online, which we'll get to hear from in just a minute.
Jess, thank you very much. I'm John Morrison. I'm the President and CEO of E4 Carolinas. And if you're not familiar with the organization, we're the trade organization for the energy companies in the Carolinas, in both North and South Carolina. We have 140 or so members. We're organized back in 2012 with the mandate and charge to grow the energy economy in our region, and have been doing that ever since. Right now, we're structured with a variety of focus areas, this innovation being one of them, of which this workshop is one series. But we also focus on economic development and cluster development, both from a research standpoint, but also recruiting companies. We do policy introductions. I want to be clear, we don't advocate policy, but what we do is make sure that our members have access to policymakers, and policymakers can rely upon E4 Carolinas for information about the energy industry and introductions to particular companies within the industry if they like. We also have a series of workforce development leadership courses, as well as an energy boot camp for people coming new into the arena of energy, which is widely subscribed. We have hundreds of graduates from those two programs across the Carolinas. We have a communications group that wrestles with some of the challenges of communicating energy-related matters, both to other companies, but more importantly to the general public. And then most recently have started a initiative on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion to help promote the diversity in the energy industry in our two states, and to help our companies, our member companies, as they address similar issues. And that's it in a nutshell. If you are not a member, if your company is not a member, I certainly would encourage you to consider membership in E4 Carolinas, a host of benefits and opportunities that come from it. And with that, let me first of all thank our sponsor, Bradley, for sponsoring this seminar series once again, and introduce Monica Dozer, who is representing Bradley today. Monica.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Appreciate everyone being here today, and especially appreciate you, Eric, and PowerSecure for joining us. My name is Monica Dozier. I am a partner in the Charlotte office of Bradley. We're a full-service national law firm based in the Southeast. Our energy team features attorneys with many diverse areas of practice, from project finance to development and real estate. My main area of practice is actually on the project side of renewable energy plants, from EPC to O&M through operational life, trying to make sure we get the most out of our renewable assets and we deploy them in a judicious way. So on behalf of Bradley, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, E4, for having us. I will not further delay you with anything else, but I will say it is my privilege to introduce our speaker, Eric DuPont, today. Eric is the Chief Development Officer for PowerSecure and a 21-year veteran of the utility and energy services space, with extensive experience in accounting, financial planning, mergers and acquisitions, structured finance, and commercial contracting. Eric is responsible for development, structuring, and funding of over $1.5 billion energy projects. He previously led the structured finance group for Duke Energy's Energy Service Division and Ameresco's Energy Services. Eric joined PowerSecure in 2013 as the Vice President of Finance, and was later promoted to Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, Treasurer, and Secretary for the business until 2017. In 2016, Eric successfully led the sale of PowerSecure to Southern Company. Today, he leads PowerSecure's new ventures, project investments, commercial contracting, and deal structuring initiatives, holding responsibility for the performance of investments made by PowerSecure. Eric holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from App State and a master's of tax from Denver University. And it is our privilege to have you with us today, Eric. Appreciate your time and your sharing about PowerSecure. I will turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Monica. And I know you're a true Carolinian if you said App State versus Appalachian State. So I do appreciate that. So
Transplant, but I've got the logo.
okay, absolutely. That's great. That's great to see. Great to hear. So appreciate the opportunity to introduce the participants here on PowerSecure. Let me just start with this title slide, and we love this. I particularly like this title slide because it sets at the crossroads of what our customers are experiencing. They have true power resiliency requirements, and when we talk about power resiliency, we're talking about long-term power resiliency. We're not talking about a couple of hour duration. Our customers are looking to ensure that they have long-term duration of power resiliency, from what they put at their facilities. But they also have these goals to achieve net zero carbon targets, or ESG goals, or now I guess the announcement, I think it was earlier today, and Monica, you probably know best about the SEC around, reporting requirements that are going to come for public companies as it relates to carbon impact. So a lot of stuff happening in the marketplace, a lot of drive from stakeholders and our customers' businesses that are really conflicting goals from what the customer has. I mean, you don't have today the opportunity to achieve net zero carbon with 100% long-term resiliency in the business. The technology just doesn't exist at this point in time. I mean, there's technologies that can bridge you a part of the way there. Battery storage, for example, solar and battery storage coupled together, can get you part of the way there. But truly economic-driven solutions that achieve both 100% resiliency and net zero carbon, those just don't exist at this point in time. So what we're really having conversations with our customers about is how do we set you up and prepare you for the future? How do we go ahead and put in place the components to provide you with 100% resiliency in your business today, with the objective as technologies advance, that you're prepared for this net zero carbon future that is expected. And so what you'll see and hear me talk about a lot in this presentation is microgrids. And that's really where PowerSecure has historically focused. We were doing microgrids before they were called microgrids. And so I'll talk about our history. I'll talk about our solutions. I'll talk about our microgrid solution. I'll talk about some projects that we've done, and then I'll be happy to take some questions, and hopefully I have some answers to those questions. So with that, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. So a little bit of history on PowerSecure. We were founded in 2000, and the business was really originated around, utilizing distributed energy systems to drive, one, long-term resiliency for the customer, and two, to drive economic value. And so the technology of choice back in early 2000 was diesel generation. And so we've installed a number of diesel generation systems that were designed to allow the customer to achieve long-term resiliency, power resiliency at their facility, but also to utilize those assets to participate into the market. So that may have been, and still is today, what we call peak shaving, reducing the demand charge side of the customer bill. It could be participating load into a curtailment program and utilizing the distributed generation asset as a alternative resource, local resource for the customer's power. It could be participating into deregulated markets, ERCOT and PJM and MISO and New York ISO and you name it. So we're participating across the country on a national scale in this distributed energy systems, which today we now label as a microgrid. And so I've used that term now twice, microgrid. Maybe not everybody on this phone call is familiar with what a microgrid is. So if you are, bear with me. If you're not, hopefully this is somewhat informative. Can you go back one slide, just, sorry. So a microgrid is, we really adopt a DOE definition and kind of keep it pretty simple. It is the ability for a distributed energy asset, either one or multiple distributed energy assets located at the customer site, traditionally behind the meter, to provide long-term power, at least 24 hours worth of continuous power to a customer facility, and the ability to operate in parallel with the grid. And so, as I talked about earlier, if you kind of step back and you think about an economic solution like solar and storage coupled together, it bridges you part of the way on that 24 hours. The likelihood is that with solar and storage, you could get 8 hours of good solar and maybe another 4 hours of battery storage. So you got a 12-hour window there. It doesn't quite meet the definition of a microgrid from our standpoint. And so PowerSecure is doing both basic and advanced microgrid deployments. Basic microgrid is just a single distributed energy resource. So that example I gave you when we were originally doing these projects back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s and using a diesel generation system, those were a basic microgrid. It's one individual distributed energy asset, in this case, a diesel generation system that was providing that long-term resiliency for the customer. We designed them to run in parallel with the grid, and so we met that definition of a microgrid. An advanced microgrid has multiple distributed energy resources coupled together, working together at the customer site behind the meter in order to provide the same benefits of long-term resiliency and the ability to operate in parallel with the grid as well. So as Monica said, we did sell the business to, our PowerSecure business was sold to Southern Company in 2016. So today we sit under the utility Southern Company based out of Atlanta, Georgia, as the part of the unregulated business of Southern Company. Finally, a couple of other highlights, and I've got a few more on the next slide, but PowerSecure's 20-year business, we've done over 2,100 microgrid systems, and if you look at the kind of market share of how, PowerSecure as compared to others in the industry, we've by far done more microgrids than anybody else. I think the last statistic that we saw coming out of Wood Mackenzie was we've done about 75% of the microgrids across the country. So lion's share of the microgrids have been done by PowerSecure. The thing that we're most proud of is our high reliability related to these microgrid deployments. So we operate at a 99.5% reliability, and that far exceeds what the industry standard is. The industry standard is somewhere around 95%. Is about the best data that we can get. So if you look at, our customers are expecting when they put a microgrid system at their facility, they're expecting that system is going to operate when power is not available, when the utility power is not coming from the grid, from their utility company. They're expecting that microgrid is there and able to operate. And so we want to make sure that our reliability of our systems, so when those microgrids are called upon to operate, and they operate for either a standby event, and those standby events are when the grid power is not available, or they could operate for a load management event. And that's the general term that we use for running the microgrid systems to support a economic benefit for the customer. And again, that's that reducing the demand charge of the bill, or that's participating into a curtailment program, or is participating into a ISO or RTO program that reduces or takes the customer's load off of the grid, and the microgrid is there to supplement and support power for the customer's facility when those programs are being called upon. The other side of the business that we have is an energy efficiency business, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute about how these kind of two work together. We're also very proud of our energy efficiency side. We've done over $800+ million of energy efficiency projects, and we do everything from engineering those solutions to installing and commissioning those projects. And so that's the breadth of what PowerSecure does. We'll talk a little bit more about what those solutions are here in a minute. All right, Jess, you can go to the next slide now. Thank you. So as I said, PowerSecure's a few more stats about us. We are, as I talked about, our 2,100 microgrid systems that we've done, about 145, that number's a little bit dated now, we're about 150 advanced microgrid deployments, and again, leading the country in those deployments, at least based upon the Wood Mackenzie data that we have. And so those are, again, multiple distributed energy resources working together at a customer site, and that's a combination typically of solar, storage, and some type of fossil fuel-based generation system, natural gas or diesel generation system. It may have a fuel cell coupled with it. And I got a couple of examples of projects here in a minute that we'll talk through. I talked a little bit about our standby events. And again, we're operating these microgrids to support times when grid power is not available. And so you see a stat there of 28,610 successful standby events. That means that, again, it's that high reliability that I talked about, that 99.5% reliability. When the grid power is not available, we're successfully operating our microgrids 28,000 plus times in order to support customers when the grid's not available. We've also operated over 140,000 times when our microgrids are called upon in order to support a load management event. Again, that's an economic benefit that the customer can get by participating into programs across either utility programs on a regulated basis or participating on a deregulated basis into the RTO or ISO type programs. And so we're able to gather both the reliability of our systems as well as the number of events that we're able to support our customers on, because we have a very robust monitoring platform, which we call Power Control. And so that platform allows us to capture the data about our microgrid systems. It allows us to control and to dispatch those microgrids from a remote site, from our remote network operations center located in Durham, North Carolina. So we're able to test our customers' microgrids on a frequent basis. We're able to, when we get notified of a opportunity to create economic value for our customers, if that's participating again in a program, if that's running because real-time prices and ERCOT are increasing above a certain strike price, we're able to run these microgrids and control them and dispatch them from our Power Control Center, as I said, that is sitting in Durham. So we're able to capture this data. We're able to report the high reliability of our microgrids, and we're also able to provide that level of service to our customers where it's completely hands-off to them. We're able to support them completely with the operation of our microgrids. They don't have to worry about it. They know when grid power goes, it's not going to be available or is not available, that our microgrids is going to operate. Our network operations center makes sure that those systems are fully tested and ready to operate when they're needed and are to be called upon either by the utility, by the grid, or by the customer. We got about right around 1,000 employees within the business. And the other kind of key interesting stat about us is we also have a full service department. So if you think about like our ability to monitor these microgrid systems, so when we start seeing issues, if we have issues with the microgrid system that can't be remotely cleared, we're able then to deploy our service technician base. And you can see there where we maintain over 4.7 gigawatts of power across the country. That's including about the 2.1 gigawatts or so of power generation that Power Secure is installed as microgrids for our customers. And then we're also maintaining other people's systems as well. Jess, don't mind, next slide. So we think that the microgrids create extraordinary value. And from our standpoint, we're really focused on, our primary focus is really operating behind the customer meter. Again, working directly with that commercial, industrial customer base that may be working through a utility and partnering with the utility to provide our services and solutions to the utility customer. So our primary time is we're sitting behind the customer meter, but we also support our customers, and these are typically utility customers that we're supporting with in front of the meter solutions, setting at typically a distribution feeder, distribution substation. And so we're providing microgrids at both levels, at both locations. I've got a good example of one in front of the meter where we are we've set a microgrid at Fort Benning. It's working in conjunction with Flint Energies, and that microgrid supports the distribution feeder that is feeding power into Fort Benning. So it's setting at the substation level, and when there is an event that causes power disruption, that microgrid is able to operate and supply power to a larger portion of the base than just a single facility. That's an example of that. Another one is we have a system that we installed at the city of Bennettsville in South Carolina in conjunction with Marlboro Electric Cooperative. And that project also sets at the substation level and is able to supply power to the city of Bennettsville when grid power may not be available. It's also used then to create economic value related to the supply agreements that Marlboro Electric has. So if you look at the components below, the graphic below, which talks about the components of a microgrid. So we see, our view is that the microgrid provides value to both sides of the equation. It provides value to the customer through business continuity, and that's that, reliability of power to ensure that their operations continue as needed, even when grid power is not available. Therefore, having loss prevention related to their product or whatever particular offering that they have. It should also reduce insurance costs, so less business interruption insurance that's driven by weather events, et cetera. It also allows them to avoid capital. They don't have to put capital into these types of systems. PowerSecure will make the investment of capital into these projects and receive the economic benefit that's associated with these related to a utility tariff or, again, the ISO market, and utilize that benefit in order to help pay for that asset. And in some cases, we also see that can support the overall emissions reductions. And I talked about kind of carbon reduction goals that our customers have and net zero carbon targets they have. So we see that our microgrids, through the combination of the assets, can help reduce their overall emissions profile today and set them up for that net zero carbon targets of the future. On the utility side, we also see the benefits of microgrids in supporting the utilities and things such as a non-spinning substitute for spinning reserves. So if you think about a microgrid that has fast deployment, the microgrid can operate and allow the utility to reduce the amount of non-spinning reserves that are sitting there waiting for grid fluctuations. Our microgrids can step in and support the grid in a greater way. It also supports demand response programs that the utility promotes with their customers. Peak load management. We've got one in a microgrid system in Yuma, Arizona at the Marine Corps Air Station, working in conjunction with Arizona Public Service, that is responding to frequency dips or frequency fluctuations on a distribution feeder that is feeding the Marine Corps Air Station. So as frequency moves, our microgrid responds accordingly and is able to either start up and push power in to maintain frequency levels or be able to absorb power in the event that there's over-frequency situations. So there's a lot of value, as we see, in microgrids being located at the customer facility or at that distribution substation level, and that creates value for both the utilities as well as for the customer. So if you look at the combination of the various types of assets that may go into a microgrid, and I'll have some further examples of this that are real life examples, but you can see that renewables like solar are popular into a microgrid, fuel cells, battery energy storage, natural gas or diesel-based generation, EV charging can get incorporated into a microgrid. All of that sets, and obviously the utility feed coming in. All of that sits around a microgrid controller, and that microgrid controller is making the decision on which assets are going to be utilized when in order to be the most efficient and effective to provide the best cost value to the customer based upon the conditions at the particular point in time. So microcontrollers making real-time decisions on whether to utilize that solar energy to fill battery storage or whether we're discharging battery storage. It also makes a decision on when it's best to run that natural gas or diesel-based generation system based upon the needs, based upon what's going on with the other microgrid components. So that's kind of a high level, kind of even more in depth, on what a microgrid is and kind of how PowerSecure views, and supports both the utility and our customers in deploying microgrids. Next slide, Jess. Keep going to the next one. So on this slide, we like to show this Venn diagram and show kind of, as I talked about, energy efficiency as one piece of our business, and then we call it distributed infrastructure, and that's a fairly broad term with regard to microgrids or resiliency solutions. You know, those are our two business lines that PowerSecure focuses on. And so as we see kind of the overlap of a combination of doing energy efficiency, so how is energy being used at the customer facility, and how do we use that energy more efficiently? And that could be deployment of new technologies, new lighting systems, new HVAC controls, whatever it may be. So using energy smarter, which reduces costs, reduces kWh consumption on a permanent basis, and therefore reduces carbon. Couple that with a microgrid deployed at the customer site, we believe provides the best, it creates an efficient, resilient, reliable, clean, and sustainable supply of power for our customers. So that's really how our two solutions work together. And we think it creates the best value when we're talking about both of these kind of combined as a holistic solution for our customers. Next slide. And so I'm going to shift back over to the microgrid conversation for a second. So as we sit down and talk to our customers, we try to keep the message fairly simple around how can microgrids really benefit a customer. And I talked about these a little bit already, but it's helped to kind of really focus in on this, because what we like to bring our customers back to is really 3 R's, and to keep the messaging simple on what a microgrid can do. A microgrid can create long-term resiliency and power, redundancy and power for their business operations, and therefore, allowing continuous operations of their business, thereby better uptime in their business, thereby better efficiency, avoiding losses in their business. But it also can create a return on investment. And obviously, the things I just mentioned, the resiliency piece of it creates some level of return on investment, and getting a customer to value what resiliency means for them sometimes can be challenging. So when we start talking about return on investment, I'm talking about the other opportunities to create economic value from utilizing a microgrid to allow the customer to reduce their energy costs on their bill. And that could be, again, reducing that demand charge. That could be running during times when real-time pricing is skyrocketing in ERCOT. It could be allowing them to participate in a utility tariff that's a curtailment program. It could be any combination of values, what we call value stacking, what the market calls value stacking these various components together. PowerSecure has the expertise to be able to come in and to evaluate how do we create that return on investment that helps pay for that microgrid asset to be located at that customer site. So this is over and above the resiliency benefits that our customers would see from these microgrids. And then finally, reducing the carbon footprint. As I said, going to net zero carbon today is not feasible from an economic technology standpoint, but setting it up that you're able to incorporate in future technologies into the framework of a microgrid allows a customer to go ahead and prepare themselves for those future technologies that allow them to get to net zero carbon, but even in today's environment allows them to reduce the carbon footprint impact related to their facility. Next slide. PowerSecure, we feel like we're unique in the industry, and when we obviously as we talk to microgrid providers across the country and see others that are providing microgrids, we found that we're unique in the vertically integrated, and yes, I know this is in a 360 diagram, so we don't show it vertically. 360 is very intentional. I'll talk about that in a second, but we are unique in the fact that we are vertically integrated in our delivery model. So from the identification of the solution all the way through the operations and analytics of how that asset is performing, all of that is performed by PowerSecure. And when I say performed, that means performed by badged employees of PowerSecure. Now, sure, we supplement our resources on the construction side with, electrical contractors or various contractors that support the installation of our microgrids. But we have the resources sitting inside that PowerSecure does this within our four walls. And that is what we like to say to our customers is that gives you one throat to choke or one back to pat, right? That allows, from your standpoint as a customer, you know that you're coming to PowerSecure and you're looking to PowerSecure and we're doing all these things for you. So let me orient you with this diagram a little bit. It's really broken into three main phases. One, development is the first phase. That is identifying the solution. That's determining what is the value associated with that solution. And then the engineering, the initial engineering related to that preliminary engineering, 30% design type level of engineering effort to get to a customer to making a buy decision related to the solution, and most likely in this case, a microgrid. And then as you move out of that green into that light blue area, this is the execution side. This is the final design and engineering, both from a field engineering perspective, project level engineering, to the product level engineering. So PowerSecure has product engineers on staff because we build many of the components related to our microgrids, particularly the controls and the gear associated with our microgrid deployments. PowerSecure is building that at our factory in Durham. So that allows us to integrate in and have customized solutions for our customers to be able to meet their objectives. So as I say, we have a full manufacturing. We have about 400,000 square feet of space in the Durham area, and a big chunk of that is taken up by our manufacturing operations. So we're manufacturing, I talked about our gear. We're also packaging battery energy storage. We're packaging natural gas and diesel generation systems, and control packages, et cetera, related to our microgrid deployments. We have a full project management construction team. And when I talk about the construction team, those are, in the field electrical technicians that are, pulling wire, they're setting conduit, they're doing the manual labor in the field, and so we got boots on the ground out at our customer sites. And then finally, the commissioning aspect, we view this as critically important. That commissioning where our engineers are kind of going back in as the system's now installed and ensuring that the design as intended has been incorporated into what's been installed at the site level, that the sequence of operations and everything is set up in order to support, the customer's operations, and that the microgrid is ready to operate for those economic events, as well as for those grid outage events. And then finally, you move into the dark blue area, and this is our customer care side, where that monitoring platform, that power control monitoring platform I talked about, is critically important, and to be able to look and see what's going on with those microgrids to ensure that they're ready and able to operate when they're called upon for whatever event that may be. That full service team that's able to support those microgrids, get to the sites quickly, be able to ensure those all the microgrid components are functioning as intended. Operations, and most of our deployments don't have people at site. We have a few where we do have some operators sitting at the customer sites. So we do have a full, an operations team as well. And then, in today's environment, the ability to capture this data, and kind of going back to what I talked about before in monitoring, we got terabytes and terabytes of data related to, our microgrid deployments at customer facilities. So now we have all this data, utilizing the data to make smarter decisions. When do you operate for certain events? How do you get more efficient in utilization of fuel? How do you get better predictive maintenance related to the microgrid systems? So all of that data that we have is now we analyze in order to make better decisions and to make sure that microgrid system is learning, that it is self-learning and is able to go through and make the decisions smarter on what asset is being deployed and for what situation, depending on what's going on at the customer site and related to the grid. So this, as I said, we intentionally put this into a 360 diagram. Why? Because we have a constant feedback loop within our organization. What's going on in the field from a service technician standpoint can get fed back into the commissioning team or to the engineering team to be smarter about the next solution for our customers. Next slide, Jeff. I've really already hit this. I mean, again, this is 24/7, 365, power control. This is our monitoring bureau. Again, it's based in Durham, North Carolina, with obviously backup sites around the country to support in the event that there was an event happening in Durham. The key thing here for us is we want it to be a white glove service for our customers, and so that they don't have to worry about whether that microgrid system is going to operate or not. We want them to feel comfort during those times when a hurricane is coming through the East Coast and they've got multiple sites that are going to be impacted. We want them to know that their microgrid system located at their facilities is well taken care of. Its fuel's been topped off, fuel's been managed. We're making sure that the systems are ready to operate. They've been tested, whatever it may be. Whatever the situation is, our hands-on monitoring team is making sure that the customers are well taken care of. The other thing that's a key element here is we have, if somebody's going to call, somebody's going to answer the phone. If it's Christmas Day and we get a call, somebody's answering that phone. So we always have somebody ready and setting at that monitoring bureau. So it's not a call service. This is somebody that would be live, ready to take action to support our customer needs. Next slide. A lot of this I've already covered. I think probably the couple of things to just highlight. I mean, just look at the number of alerts that our team has dealt with since 2016, over 7.5 million alerts related to our microgrids. And these could be just nuisance alarms to something that is very serious about the microgrids. And so again, they have the expertise to understand what's going on with the microgrids, how they were supposed to operate, and be able to address any concerns and issues related to them. And then look at the number of calls, 70,000 calls to our power control 800 number. That again addresses that. We have people there to answer the phone when that storm's coming through, to be able to address and be prepared for those storms before, during, and after the storm. We want our customers to feel like they've been well served during that entire storm event. Next slide. Our PowerSecure service, it's an extensive nationwide network of service technicians. We got about 200 and some people on our service team today, about 100 plus or so actual service technicians that are moving around the country servicing, really anything from switchgear to inverters, solar arrays, to natural gas and diesel-based generation systems. So they've got broad level of expertise, ready to service the team. Having that service function setting inside of PowerSecure for us is critically important. Again, it ensures that high reliability and ensures that prompt response to address customer needs related to the microgrid system. It allows us to integrate in our monitoring with our service and provide a complete holistic solution to our customers. And so with our network of various locations across the country, we have our supply of parts ready and able to quickly get our technician deployed to be able to service our customer needs. Next slide. One of the partnership announcements we made, this was in 2020, early 2021, was with Neste. They provide renewable fuel, renewable diesel fuel. And this is HVO-based renewable diesel fuel. And so that has really been an interesting add for PowerSecure. We're able to plug it into our existing diesel generation systems that have been that we've deployed and that we continue to deploy for our customers. And it results in about an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to petrodiesel. And that's really, if you look over the life cycle of that, the GHG emissions related to petro processing compared to renewable diesel processing. And so we've really seen a lot of interest in this, particularly in places where low carbon fuel standards are in place, California in particular. A ton of this fuel is being flowed into California to support microgrid deployments that PowerSecure's done. Next slide. So I've got a couple of project examples as I bring my presentation to a conclusion. This one's in Eastern North Carolina, working in conjunction with NCMC and one of their utility partners, or one of the utility cooperatives. And this project was an advanced microgrid, and it has 200 kW of solar panels. It has 100 kW of diesel generators. It has a biogas generator, and it has the battery energy storage system. But PowerSecure came into an existing project that already had the solar panels and the diesel and the biogas generators installed, and we incorporated in the battery energy storage system, and then brought the microgrid controller on top in order to have all the assets to be able to function and work together. So this system provides resiliency to the Butler Farms location that it serves, but it also supports the distribution feeder downstream of where Butler Farms facility is located. And so it's been a great value for NCMC to see how a microgrid can function in relation to the greater grid. It also supported Butler Farms in helping them achieve some of their carbon and greenhouse gas emission reduction targets that they were looking to achieve. So their environmental goals that they were looking to achieve as a business, it allowed us to support them in achieving those. So the interesting project is smaller in scale, but it is a very good example of a number of distributed energy resources coming together as an advanced microgrid and how those work together. Next slide. This one's on a much larger scale. Looks like part of my presentation got cut off, but this is a technology campus in California. So it may look familiar to some people, but this has two utility feeds coming in from PG&E. It has 16 megawatts of solar. It has 6 megawatts of diesel-based generation, 4 megawatts of fuel cells, and those are blown fuel cells that were installed. And then PowerSecure, in this case, also provided the battery energy storage system related to this project, but then also integrated in with the microgrid controller. And this is an extremely complex microgrid system. You think about the load profile of this type of facility and it was ever changing during the project execution phase. They were adding in EV charging stations and increasing the load. And so the integration of the microgrid that we were controlling with the building automation system in order to do load shedding and to make sure that the facility had the ability to operate on a long-term sustainable basis was their key objective. And so there was an extreme amount of complex engineering and technical development that was done in order to get this microgrid to operate effectively. And it's been operating now for about 3 years now. So very proud of this project, a very large project, very complex in the integration effort of all those technologies working together in conjunction with the load profile for this facility. And then finally, happy to invite anyone that's on this webinar to our campus in Durham. We have a fully functioning microgrid at our campus, and there's a QR code down at the bottom. If you're interested, you can scan that, and it'll take you to our website in order to get a little more information, and you can sign up for either virtual tour, which we do these virtually, are happy to host you if you're interested in getting hosted. I'm sure Jess can get my information out to whoever's interested in showing up at the facility. I'm happy to meet you there and get you acquainted with what PowerSecure does even in more detail. So if you look at this diagram, this sits behind one of our 2 buildings. So we have 2 utility feeds coming in for this campus. We have the bigger white box at the top of the screen, or sorry, in the middle of the picture, is our Tier 4 final diesel generation system. That's what we call a power block. That's a 4-engine design. We parallel our small 625 kW engines together in order to operate those in parallel, and then be able to put multiple of those power blocks, stringing those together as needed. But this particular one is a 4-engine lineup. The smaller white box right below that is our battery energy storage system, and has our portions of our switchgear lineup included in there. And so that is our predominantly, again, the battery energy storage system, about a megawatt hour of battery energy storage, 500 kW system. We have 50 kW of Bloom fuel cells that sits right next to that, the little gray boxes, and then our NextGear main switchboard. NextGear is our brand for our switchgear, but our switchboard sits there next to the building, which is the other gray box. And then you can see on top of the roof here, we got 200 kW of solar. And then we have a mobile, PowerSecure also builds mobile generation solutions for our customers. And so we have a 1250 kW mobile Tier 4 final solution sitting there that can integrate into our microgrid as well. And you can see next to that, there's a small gray box, which we call a quick power. This allows this is basically a switchgear piece of equipment, but allows us to do quick interconnections of those mobile generation systems to the facility, incorporated into the microgrid rather than having to have a technician that comes out and wires up that mobile solution, which can take hours or days to get somebody out, particularly during a storm event. We're able to install one of these quick powers. It's a quick plug and play. Actually, the driver of the truck that just pulled up that mobile generator can actually do the connections. And so we see a lot of interest in those quick power solutions for our customers. So that's our campus microgrid. Again, anybody interested in taking a look at that in further detail, I'm happy to host you at the campus or do a virtual tour with you. So I think that is the end of my presentation. Again, thanks for the opportunity to present to everybody on this webinar, and thanks to E4 for allowing PowerSecure to present.
Eric, thank you very much. It's very, very interesting. Let me encourage all the participants, if you have a question for Eric, please put it in the chat, and we'll try to address as many as we can in the about half hour or so that we have available to us. Eric, I'll kick off and ask a question, and that is, I'm curious the role of the local utility in making the sale, if you will, to the customer.
Yeah, I mean, we've always worked from our beginning of our history with the utility. We don't think going in opposition of the utility is a good business strategy. We also think that the utility typically, has a great brand with their customers. And so as you walk in with the local utility, hand in hand with a microgrid solution, it seems to move the process along much quicker. It moves it quicker on both sides. On the utility side, because the utility is engaged early on, so the interconnection and siting and all the challenges of working together with the utility to make sure that the system gets integrated with them, a lot of that gets smoothed out on the front side. And then on the back side, working with the customer, again, it helps with the customer feeling comfortable because they know the utility brand is sitting behind the solution that PowerSecure is bringing to them.
And what sort of interconnection studies does the utility need to perform
It varies a lot, to be quite honest with you. It depends on how accustomed they are to having microgrids or distributed energy resources connected to their grid. So some have very well-defined interconnection standards and requirements, and we obviously go through the process of demonstrating that our systems have those particular control schemes built into them. Others are brand new to this, and so we have to walk them through a process of understanding how the microgrid operates, how it is intended to operate to support the customer, and how it can operate in conjunction with the grid, and help them. In some cases, we help them kind of write those interconnection standards in order to, make it as efficient as possible. I mean, that's one of the things that we've seen, and one of the restrictions in getting a microgrid deployed is if you get a very robust interconnection requirement, can drive cost up on the deployment, and therefore make the economics of this system not reasonable.
On the thousands of load management events that you all have managed, who's making the decision, and how is that decision being made? Is that the customer, based on, unique events and information, or is it the operations center reacting to, pre-established circumstances?
Yeah. So I was going to say hundreds of thousands of events, but
yes.
But yeah. So again, this question, the answer to this one also varies, and it depends on what program or benefit that you're going after. So let's use real-time pricing in ERCOT. There is an established strike price typically that we worked with our customer to identify. Anything above, any real-time price above a certain level, we want you to go ahead and operate the microgrid. That's one way to do it. We could also, if you're looking at a curtailment program, those are easy because typically you're getting a notice either hours or a day ahead to say, we're going to curtail tomorrow under the program and you need to be ready. But the challenging one is going and getting that coincident peak, or that peak shaving, that reduction of the demand charge. That's the one that's really challenging. That's the one where you have to have that analytics to determine when is that grid peak occurring, so that you're operating the microgrid at that point in time and taking the customer load down or reducing it significantly. Most of the load is being provided by the microgrid, thereby reducing the demand charge. If you miss that event, the customer then, depending on what the CP is, it could be a 12 CP, which means it's set every month, or it could be a 1 CP, which means it's set for the year. You can miss out on a significant amount of economic benefit. So our team is making that call. In some cases, we get the benefit of the utility telling us that CP they think is going to occur, but in most of the times we have to make that call.
And what sort of data are you able to get from the utility to make that prediction as to when the utility is going to be hitting that critical peak?
Not much. And we're getting, there's no immediate load profile data coming off of the grid in most cases. We do have a couple of grids that we'll get some information from. Actually, one that I can think of off the top of my head. But most of them, we're having to use a combination of data points in order to make that decision.
Okay. Now I'm curious. I'm aware of co-ops, who basically have a similar circumstance of needing to manage that coincident peak, and they basically say they exercise their load management. What is it? 10 out of every 4 CP events, i.e., they exercise it up much more often than
that's that inefficiency that I was talking about, and that data analytics helps us get smarter and try to reduce the number of runs there. Every time you run, you're burning something, or it's additional carbon, it's additional fuel, it's the discharge of the battery, whatever it may be. There's a cost to that.
And on the efficiency side of your business, are you also working with customers in terms of demand management, from a demand side as opposed to a supply side?
It's
Or
permanent
curtailment?
reduction. Curtailment occurs more on our microgrid side, is where we really work with our customers on. On the efficiency side, it's more about a permanent reduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you're doing curtailment, are you indeed messaging informing the customer, hey, you ought to shut down part of your manufacturing process or something?
No, because our philosophy is that let's build a microgrid that supports your continuous operations. We think it's a shame to just take a partial reduction of load. You're going to take some of your operations offline. Why not put in the assets in order to allow your facility to continue to operate through the entire event and thereby maximize the amount of curtailment benefits that you can get and continue your operation and give you long-term resiliency solution. That's PowerSecure's message to our customers. I think we do have a chat
Can we get a
question.
chat?
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's a
There we
question
go.
from
Yes,
Mark.
from Mark. You mentioned hurricanes. Has PowerSecure done any hardening coastal installations with solar and storage?
Yeah, we have. I'll give you one example. Eastern North Carolina, Ocracoke Island. There's solar and storage installation that we did there. We also coupled it with a diesel recip though. I think it was an existing diesel recip that we integrated in. I mean, again, kind of going back to what I said early on, solar and storage gets you part of the way there. It does not, we don't feel like it can get us to economically. I can put a ton of battery storage in. That's not economic. It's not gonna make the economics work for a customer. So we're trying to get the right mix of solar and storage and some type of fossil fuel-based generation and minimize the amount of fossil fuel-based generation we have to have. But we like to have that asset there in order to provide that long-term resilient solution for our customer.
One of your early slides, you mentioned duck curve mitigation. Can you say a little bit more about that? I mean, is that do the utilities have tariffs on ramp rates and the like? How's that work?
So this was, I mean, we've seen this kind of in, particularly in Arizona, who has some impact with, Arizona Public Service. I think they talk publicly about the kind of duck curve impact that they have with regard to solar coming in from California into their grid. And so, our microgrid allows us to smooth that duck curve out. And again, it's a kind of quick response type systems that allows you to avoid the impacts of that duck curve and the fluctuations on that grid.
Okay. So essentially, as the solar's coming down at the end of the day, you're basically feeding.
We're able to support it, yeah.
Okay. I'm curious the value of the ancillary services that you're providing to the utility. How is that shared with the customer?
It really varies. I mean, what we've seen is a lot of our customers want to own these assets. I mean, PowerSecure has a program where we will invest capital, as I talked about this earlier, invest our capital or bring third-party capital into projects so that the customer can avoid that upfront capital deployment. And, you can do that as a service type offering. We can do it as a lease, whatever it may be. But, what we've seen is still probably 85 to 90% of our deployments are still our customers investing their capital into it. And so when they invest their capital into it, they get the full benefit associated with that ancillary service or that economic program that exists to support the investment. So they like the ROI related to those assets. If what we've also seen is where we're bringing the capital in, that we'll take a portion or all of that economic benefit. And again, it varies depending upon the location and the how much value stacking exists, and that varies significantly from ISO to ISO from utility to utility. And so we'll see us taking 100% to sharing a portion of that benefit to help pay for that that asset and the long-term operation of that asset.
And we have a question on the chat regarding renewable natural gas. And has PowerSecure ever done a microgrid project at a municipal or private water treatment plant? And if so, how could one get more details on the application?
Yeah, so we've done projects at the municipal wastewater treatment plants, both diesel and natural gas-based deployments, utilizing the RNG from anaerobic digestion. We haven't actually done a project where we've captured that methane and utilized it in a project. But we do have landfill gas to energy projects, so it's a very similar type of concept. So we've just seen that typically those projects, particularly in Texas, is where we've seen the most interest around wastewater treatment plants, particularly after the ice storm of February of last year. So we've seen a lot of interest in utilizing natural gas-based systems, participate in the ERCOT market, and RNG is something that our sister company, Southern Gas, gets involved with, being able to supply that RNG to those particular facilities.
Okay, you answered my next question. Who deals with the cleanup of the RNG so it's suitable for?
Yep, we have a sister company that does that.
Company. Okay.
Mhm.
On a slightly different topic in terms of long-term reliability, what's PowerSecure's thinking around hydrogen as a storage means, and then obviously a fuel to provide some of that longer term and a zero carbon option for longer term reliability?
Yeah, we have a lot of initiatives underway today, taking a hard look at hydrogen. We're currently in a study on, actually for our campus, on incorporating hydrogen into the advanced microgrid that I showed you. So utilizing off of the solar, putting the electrolyzer in, create that to capture that hydrogen, and then to use it either as a supplemental fuel for the natural gas-based generation system, or to use it in our forklifts. And so a number of initiatives across the southern system are underway with regard to hydrogen. So it's obviously early stage. Economics don't make sense on any type of scale basis today, but we're pretty bullish that there's going to be some deployments that are going to make sense from a hydrogen standpoint. When is that going to be? 5 years out? Don't know. Don't have my crystal ball today. So
we won't hold you to it.
Yeah.
Trying to predict the future. Is hazardous at best.
A lot of money in it, though, right? A lot of money going into it.
Certainly a lot of interest. Yeah, we're seeing that.
Yep.
Well, I don't see any other questions coming through. So Eric, let me thank you very much. This is an interesting presentation. We appreciate it very much. And let me thank Monica for sponsorship from Bradley to make this series. And this is the first of several. Jess, do you have any dates or other topics that we can share with folks about upcoming events in this series?
Not at the moment. We're keeping it a little bit secret. We have some planned dates, so stay tuned. I put a link in the chat, or a description of a link in the chat for the event page at E4 Carolina. So we should be posting some things pretty shortly. So please stay tuned. We'll have more innovation topics.
And just to make sure everybody knows that there are other innovation. So this is one series where we focus on a particular company. In this case, PowerSecure. There are other innovation series that look at particular topics with multiple voices and panel presentations. So yes, again, look at the event page on the E4 Carolina's website, and you'll see all of that. Monica, do you have any final words?
Nothing from me. Thank you very much, Eric, and thanks everyone for attending. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.